apropos to our title being Looking Anger in the Eye. This week is week 3 of May, and May is talking about emotions. And the cool part about the Science Mind magazine is that it also corresponds with emotions for the month. So there's all kinds of little threads that flow through the thought process in all of this. The goal ultimately is to be able to live the yearly themes. This year is Living Everyday Wonder. So, but we also know that our day-to-day lives can stir up some real emotions and feelings, especially these days with all the conflict around the world and within our own country. My goodness, it's just crazy sometimes turning on the news and hearing what's going on all over the place. You know, but we are not here to pretend like these waves of anger are not happening. But in these quiet moments of reflection, when we take an hour out of our busy weekends to join with other like-minded people, that I really appreciate everyone that keeps showing up, that we are encouraged to look at our reactions to them. From many years of this work myself, I have learned nothing else. I know that I am the only thing that I have control on. So just for fun, I'd like everybody to take a minute and take your index finger, and put it on the end of your nose. And know that at any point in time, this is as far as your control goes. To the end of your nose. You know, I find it hysterical sometimes to remember that when I'm in this sea of things floating around. It's like, I have no control. And then I just remember, like, here we go. I close my eyes and put my finger on my nose, and that's as far as it goes. I have been accused of being Pollyannish when it comes to real life stuff. It has happened. And I came across what Marianne Williamson says about being Pollyanna in Return to Love, one of my favorite books, on page 97. As a prime example of a miracle worker is Pollyanna. She is a 20th century character in the book, The Glad Book, written by Eleanor H. Porter. I don't know if anybody's ever read it, but it's an actual book and she's an actual character. The ego knows that when people behave unlovingly, that they have forgotten who they are, which is why she is constantly invalidated in this culture. She walked into a situation where everyone had been in a nasty mood for years, and she chose not to see the nastiness. Instead, she had faith in what laid beyond it. She extended her perception beyond what her physical senses revealed to her, to what her heart knew to be true about every human being. It didn't matter how anyone behaved. Pollyanna had faith and love. She knew that existed behind everyone's fear. And thus she invoked their love into expression. She exercised the power of forgiveness. And within a short time, everyone was nice and everyone was happy. So whenever someone says to Marianne Williamson, "You're a Pollyanna," her response is, "If only I was that powerful." You know, so next time someone calls me Pollyanna, I'm going to say thank you and the same. If only I was that powerful. It was a great reading for me this weekend, preparing for this talk. You know, today our focus is on anger and how anger manifests out in the world and how we interact with it. This handy therapist wheel, if anybody's ever seen one of these, the therapy of emotions, the emotions are in the middle, and the feelings that come out of those emotions branch off the wheel. So it gives some great words to something we may not have been able to explain why some of these feelings are being demonstrated. The seeds of anger can sprout into our everyday lives, can be described as being critical of others and aggressive. We can feel threatened, infuriated, or hostile. We can be sarcastic. We can be resentful, jealous, and we can be devastated quickly. Think about it for a minute. Sometimes we don't even realize that the behavior being manifested in the situation, that the root cause is deep-seated anger. And probably not even anger at whatever the actual situation is in front of us. It could be something completely different, triggering the feeling that makes it even more fascinating when we decide to do the work. Making the conscious decision that we want a different experience is the first step. You could even go so far as to treat it like a game if you wish. Make it more interesting. In the Science of Mind textbook, anger only appears twice in the entire book. Is that crazy? I love my concordance for the Science of Mind textbook because it tells you look up a word and it tells you how many times it appears on what page and what chapter. So it's fun when you're looking up stuff. So, and early on in my experience with the Science of Mind and Ernest Holmes, it felt Pollyannish. In the wrong egoic definition of not Marianne Williamson's definition. It was always talked about manifesting and positive thinking, and it didn't really talk about what was happening in life and how to deal with it. Or so I thought at the time. I feel now it was what I could understand and what I needed to hear at the time. But I have learned, while those things aren't necessarily acknowledged on a large scale in our teaching, it is to encourage us to fill that space knowing that nature abhors a vacuum with positive and affirmative tools like prayer, meditation, and remembering we are one with God instead of being stuck in a situation as a victim and alone. Who needs a teaching to keep us stuck in the problem, scared, thinking we're imperfect or separate or undeserving? Oh, wait, that's traditional religion. To keep us afraid and to keep us scared, right? On page 255 of the Science of Mind textbook, paragraph 3, says thoughts of greed, selfishness, and jealousy can cause congestion in various functions of the body, especially the kidney. The work of the kidneys is to eliminate the poisons of the body. Still, when our minds are filled with thoughts of anger, hatred, and resentment, we are pouring into our bodies poison in the making. Too much of this makes burden on the kidneys unable to carry, and the upbuilding of body tissue is disturbed. Still, degenerative thoughts can be turned into creative, energizing, and vitalizing one's anger into love. The same power that has been destroyed can make to build up the kidneys and the entire body. In Healing Your Body from A to Z, Louise Hay talks about patterns that cause the most dis-ease in the body, as criticism, anger, resentment, and guilt. And anger turns into things that boil and burn and infect the body. We know that long-term stress, anger, and negative thinking will eventually manifest in the physical. Louise Hay also talks about needing to be willing to let go of these thoughts and behavior. I feel the missing link between the head and the heart is knowing what needs to be done and actually doing it. In the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, step 6 talks specifically about being ready to have God remove these character defects, meaning negative emotions in this case that we're talking about, anger. If we put all these teachers together, Ernest Holmes, Marianne Williamson, Louise Hay, and Bill W., we develop a solution quickly and clearly. We may not be alcoholics or drug addicts, or we may be. But I can guess that we all have been addicted to being in control, our stories, our victimhood, or justified anger about our past experiences at some point in our lives. When we become sick and tired of being sick and tired, we start seeking a solution. hopefully, before we become physically ill because of it. That solutions may have come in words that stirred the mind and prompted the soul to question everything we were taught as children. We heard things like, thoughts are things, and guard well this garden of your soul. One of my favorite paragraphs in A Thing Called You by Ernest Holmes. Remembering to cultivate this garden comes with a willingness that moves the theory that God is the ultimate example of love. And if God and I are one, then I must be good too. From my head into my heart. This causes a chain reaction that lets the proverbial genie out of the bottle, never to return, no matter how hard the world tries. Looking fear in the eye requires willingness. It requires us to decide we want something different. We can continue listening to the ego and live in fear and anger, or turn to the center, the storm's eye. We can turn within and know that anger is not the answer. And when we choose anger, we just feel bad. We feel off center. We feel disconnected. So to return to the topic for today, once we have chosen anger, the next question is, how do I choose differently? And one of my favorite books, Drop the Rock, encourages us to practice the opposite. So if we were to step back from the situation, take a literal time out if we need to, feel the feelings and emotions and become the observer after that initial rush of energy, and very consciously think about what would be the opposite of the feelings I'm having right now about this particular situation. The answer will come in the stillness if we are willing. When we first start practicing this change in how we look at things, it can feel a little clunky. It can be a little awkward, but I encourage you not to give up. Because over time and practice, it becomes second nature. It will no longer feel like there are all these weird steps when you're in the middle of something, trying to react differently when you find yourself at the eye of the storm. These emotions and feelings swirling around us cause all kinds of physical sickness, energetic sickness, and general dis-ease. Having the willingness to practice the opposite is how you look anger in the eye and have a different experience. I could have said that at the beginning in one sentence initially, but what fun would have that been? Anger in the context of reflection is a great teacher. We are all either teaching or learning in everything. Like we were talking earlier before we started, it's like, sometimes I just like to catch a break. And a lot of times the universe is like, nope, here we are. We're doing this, But anger is a way of reacting. And being is a thief in the night. It robs us of our peace and serenity, one thought at a time. So being willing to let go of the things that no longer serve and watch a whole new life unfold before you.